All right, welcome back to Draws and Fades, episode 111, preview of the BMW Championship at Wilmington Country Club in Wilmington, Delaware. I'm your host, Owen Vrabel, joined as always by my co-host, Matthew Miller.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back.
And producer Boss is taking a little leave of absence. We're not sure how long we'll be without him, but if we do have any audio issues, feel free to shoot him a message on Twitter. But the show goes on, and we will recap the St. Jude, where Will Zalatoris won in a pretty ridiculous three-hole playoff over Sepp Straka, cashed that outright ticket for me. Huge week overall. I hit basically all of my top finishing plays as well, minus Scott Stallings' top 40, and Matt did as well. He hit on Neiman and Burns, and then Poston and Mitchell. Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt.
Neiman and Hoffland, and then
Neiman and Hoffland.
Yeah,
there you go. So good week for the boys. We're all over it. Zalatoris came through for me. Also had him in one and done. So huge week. Back inside the top 100 in EMEA, one and done with 1 week left. So we'll recap the St. Jude. We'll give you a little bit of a quick live update and talk on the scenarios surrounding that. Give you a course preview at Wilmington Country Club, which we have not seen on the PGA Tour. Kind of surprising for a playoff event to have a course we haven't seen yet on the PGA Tour, but we'll go through what we know about Wilmington Country Club. We'll go through the odds board on FanDuel, give you our thoughts on the board. I'll give you our outright picks, top 10s and top 20s, and one and done picks as always at the end. And we appreciate all you guys for following along. Give us a follow on Twitter at Owen_Vrabel, at Matty Mills85, at draws_and_fades. And give us a subscribe on the YouTube channel and some ratings, reviews on Apple and Spotify. We'd appreciate it. But don't forget, this episode is also sponsored by Rotoballer. So give their DFS packages a look. We obviously don't get too deep into the DFS stuff, but we have some awesome contributors on the DFS side, including Joe Nicely and our friend Spencer Aguiar. So go check that out and go from there. So pretty excited, Matt. Obviously, we're recording on a Tuesday. Still riding high off the Zalatoris win. It was a roller coaster ride for sure. I mean, Sepp Straka wouldn't go away. I know you were on the golf course for the end of that round, so you didn't catch the ridiculousness of the playoff or the fact that Sepp Straka just wouldn't. He was hitting fairways, hitting greens, making putts, just everything you wouldn't want having a Will Zalatoris ticket. Sepp Straka made it feel like he was going to win. So I don't know what your thoughts are, but I'm just glad to get through there with the Zalatoris win because there were plenty of moments of doubt.
Yeah, you were texting me some updates. I was planning on watching the whole thing, and then I got kind of like a last-second decision to play out there. Someone texted me at tea time, so I obviously joined in. Figured out pretty early on none of my guys were making the Sunday charge I needed, so took them up, played some golf, and you were texting me the updates. I was trying to follow along on Shot Track, and it seemed pretty ridiculous. I mean,
yeah. Well, and you mentioned
the one hole, what Zalatoris made, like a 13-footer to
right. So the second playoff hole, Zalatoris went way right before Straka, and Straka then hits 3-wood, which he did on the first hole as well. And the ball was leaning on the water. Like, could have easily gone into water, didn't go into water, but it was like, how is he going to hit this ball without having his feet in the water? Like, that was 100% in play, but Zalatoris was almost out of bounds and had no play towards the green. So he hit first and just punched out to like 110 yards. And then it was Straka, and it was like, I was feeling decent. Like, he's pretty fucked here. Like, he's going to have to do something ridiculous. But he took a drop and then put it to 7 feet for par. So it was like, fucking A. So now the pressure's all back in Will's court. He's 110 out, puts it outside of Straka, so he has to putt first. And, of course, Willsy with the putter. Like, granted, he needed to make a clutch putt on 18 the first time he played it because Straka and him were tied. They both birdied the par 5 16th, both parred 17. And then 18, Zalatoris was scrambling and needed to make a 10-foot putt for par. I mean, to put the pressure on Straka to a degree, because Straka was in the rough like 200 yards out. The 18th played tough all day, and he makes a putt, has that awesome celebration where he's like, what are they going to say now? Let's fucking go. Electric. At the same time, Straka somehow miraculous, not even miraculous. I mean, it was a tough shot, but he put it to 20 feet for birdie on the 18th hole, missed it. So we went to a playoff. So the second playoff hole, Zalatoris needs to make a 13-foot putt and then put just the pressure back on Straka, and Straka makes a 7-footer after he had missed a putt on the first playoff hole where he could have won. And then actually on that first playoff hole, I also thought that Straka might have missed the comebacker, but he didn't. And then obviously the third playoff hole was just insanity. So Zalatoris hits the ball right, doesn't have any good body language, and it hits the rocks multiple times, rolls into a crevice in between the rough and the rocks. And I'm like, oh, well, we're fucked. And Straka then puts it in the water. I mean, I guess like he didn't know how screwed Zalatoris' ball actually was from like the tee box, but like you can't put that in the water if you're Straka. And he puts it in the water. And then again, like if Zalatoris' ball goes in the water immediately, they're both going to the penalty area together. And Zalatoris would have hit first. But because he had a decision to make, Straka went to the penalty area first, hits his ball into the bunker, and then hits his ball to 6 feet for double bogey. And Zalatoris at this point decides he's gonna obviously. I'm like, just pick it up, dude. Like, I don't know where you're gonna drop from, but just pick it up. So he goes back to the penalty area, puts it to like 8 feet, and makes the putt to win the tournament. Just incredible because Zalatoris, knowing Zalatoris, it's like you kind of feel like for him to win, he's gonna stuff one for birdie in a playoff hole potentially and like have like a 2-foot putt for the win. But he made clutch putts on, I mean, basically every hole that he needed to coming down the stretch. So hats off to him. It was an awesome week. Big winner, needed to turn the ship around. And now we're at another event where it's a great field minus the live guys. And we have, like I mentioned last week, the odds board kind of shifts where it's tougher to find great value because there's less players in the field, so no good event. But yeah, Zalatoris wins an electric factory. So
yeah, I mean, deserving win. He obviously had been so close so many times. So it's good to see him get a win. Obviously, good to see you get the win. Seemed like a lot of the community friends were on that, so happy for you guys. I was a little bit surprised. I mean, obviously the course was pretty tough, but what did they go to a playoff at? Like
15.
15. So I was kind of surprised to see because there was like it played hard, but there was low scores out there all week. Like guys, Siwoo got to -8 on the first day.
Right.
Obviously had the hole out on 18, but there was like 63, 64s out there. I was surprised that nobody kind of put a few of them together and were able to get up to like that minus like 17, 18 marker. It kind of felt like even on the last day we were talking about it, that like it felt like there was going to be like a -7, -8 round out there that, if you were like -9, -10, you that would be, good enough to get you into like a playoff. And it just seemed like no one really made that move.
Well, yeah, and it's funny. I mean, for next year, just to note, I mean, it's if you don't hit the fairway, that rough plays tough, and like it's really tough to get the ball inside 20 feet, and the greens aren't easy. And we saw that if you're playing incredibly well off the tee and have your low irons / wedges dialed in, like you definitely can go low. Like we saw Siwoo do, we saw Zalatoris do, we saw Neiman do, we saw plenty of guys do it on singular days. And that's why Zalatoris' last round was so impressive because he only hit 3 fairways and still was 4 under par. And I think the thing about it is that there's danger at enough holes where, like we saw Hoffland, like he shot 5 over in like a 3-hole stretch to like completely blow up his week. And that happened to a bunch of guys. Even Cam Smith, obviously, with that huge penalty fiasco at the PGA Tour, completely fucked up.
Yeah.
Not fucked up. I mean, they got the ruling right, but the timing of it was just horrendous. Like, call that during the round or after round 3. Don't wait till round 4, an hour before the guy's tee time, to tell him that he's penalized.
Yeah, you know how it's kind of like when a guy submits a score and then they get him for like, oh, you signed an incorrect scorecard. Here's like a penalty. Like it should always be like the PGA Tour. Like if you don't get to it in time, like you're at fault and you got to let you know what I mean. It was ridiculous that people had already teed off.
Yeah, no, it was
Well,
horrible.
at least when it got announced. I mean, maybe they had determined that it was going to be a penalty before, but at least like when we found out, like the people had already.
No, I'm pretty
teed
sure
off.
that was real. That was real time stuff, because like Cam Smith isn't showing up to the course super early because he was -11 and in like the one of the last 4 tee times to go off. So, and his tee time didn't get switched. He went off with the -11s. He was just teed off at -9.
Yeah,
So
that's
that
crazy.
ruling happened way too late, and it was just an embarrassment. Like, it just looks bad. It's
Now I
optically
thought
bad,
too,
especially with this day and age in gambling. We do a gambling podcast show. Like, there were people who, I mean, Cam Smith is a winner. Like, he goes out and wins these tournaments. We just saw him win at the Open Championship, coming back from, I don't know, 3 or 4 strokes out on Rory on Sunday. And then, I mean, going into round 4 this weekend, he was down 2 to JJ Spawn.
yeah,
And he then starts his round down 4, and most likely pissed off to a degree. I mean, apparently he said, like, I get it. Like, if you look at the replay, like 100%, I didn't know the rule. Like, my ball was on the out of bounds line, which, I mean, to a degree, he definitely should have known the rule, didn't, and got penalized for it. But he wasn't getting an advantage from having his ball touching the out of bounds line. So it's a stupid rule in general, but nevertheless, it should be called in real time.
yeah.
Not even in real time, but like during that round. It was on the 4th hole. Like, it was 24 hours later that it got called.
Well, I thought they changed the rule that like no one was allowed to like call it in or anything like that. Like, how did they not find it till so late?
I mean, I saw some tweets that basically it was like, I don't know how many PGA Tour rules officials they have, but someone must have been like rewatching the round and happened to stumble upon the Cam Smith drop. Like, I don't know.
Of all people, I mean, like how many times do you think like you could go back and reassess a penalty if you rewatched everybody's round and scoped out everything they were doing?
Yeah, I don't know, because apparently he was playing with Ryan Palmer, and apparently Ryan Palmer didn't realize that that was a thing either. So I don't know if this is like a very well-known rule. It sounds like it should be, to a degree, pretty well known, but I don't know. You're not planning on dropping balls right next to the green and having it roll back into the penalty area, but it wasn't like inside the line. It was touching the line, so he just played it. So yeah, 2-shot penalty. Regardless, it was just stupid, because for what my purposes of like talking about it, like for people who are gambling on it, people bet him at like plus 350 on Saturday night, and then Sunday mid-afternoon, after plenty of people had teed off, he's now at like plus 1,200, plus 1,300. And it was like, you could have waited to get that, or probably just not bet him. He was down 4 strokes. So yeah, nevertheless, to your point of having guys in the mix, we both had guys in the mix. Obviously, besides Zalatoris for me, that, and going into Sunday, I thought for sure that someone could shoot low, whether it was Burns, Neiman, Morikawa, Sungjae. I had 4 guys within 5 of the lead, but it played tough. And Morikawa missed 2 putts inside 5 feet on his final 5 or 6 holes. He would have got in at 13 under, which maybe would have put some more pressure on Zalatoris and Straka, but they were clearly the best 2 on Sunday from where they were at in the leaderboard, and Zalatoris came home victorious. So let's not ramble on too much about that. But yeah, the optics of that penalty were bad, and it definitely made it easier for Zalatoris to win. So at the end of the day, I'm thankful, but they fucked up. So yeah, I mean, I guess we can touch on Liv quickly. Gooch, Swafford, and Jones obviously lost their coordinator. Were not able to play, which I don't know if it was super surprising or not. But then some details did come out that basically I think it was in Gooch's contract, where their winnings come out of their signing bonus.
Yeah, and
So
also like that was kind of like people had commented afterwards and said that the attorney sort of misspoke or that was taken out of context. Obviously, we haven't seen any of the contracts, but like someone clarified from the live side that that's not true. But I think had they been able to play and won FedEx like money, that somehow would have been recouped back from their contract. I don't know. That's what the comments were
They had
for.
won FedEx money.
Like they're not allowed to, I guess, gain like I guess additional money outside of like the live is then taken out of their
Really?
contract.
All right. So yeah,
That's what someone had commented, but they said there was nothing like the live purses were still were outside of the signing bonuses. I don't know. We don't know. I mean, I guess everyone's contract is probably different.
right. Yeah, because the way I interpreted it was that for sure, at least some of the players, when they win potentially a $4 million tournament, that it might just be coming out of their signing bonus, which.
Yeah, I don't know what each individual player's contract says. I mean, there's people who said no. There was, I think
Well, they should probably come out and say that because it definitely, from a betting perspective, for sure, like there's people that would be more inclined to win a tournament and less inclined in theory. I mean, obviously, the more money you win back off of your money that you already have, the more opportunity you have to win more money. But for $100 million contract, like it's going to take potentially even you could play 4 years in a live tour and not play well and not recoup any extra money. So we'll see. Hopefully some of that contract deals come out. Maybe we'll get a guest that can shine some light on that. But if not, it's kind of like a guessing game in terms of the contracts where people's motivations are going to be. Because like competitively speaking, it's hard to see. You would think that the like Asian tour guys probably their contracts aren't as lucrative up front. And if they win a tournament, they probably get all that money. But who knows? So that was an interesting spinoff. Like, there's going to be tons more to come out on that. Like, there's going to be more. People are going to be sued. So
yeah, and it seems like there's still much more litigation going on moving forward with that. I mean, PJ won obviously the first battle there, but it seems like there's kind of going to be several more to come moving forward. Obviously, we have the majors to get into and how that's going to work.
Right. No, and those are the big ones. Like, and so apparently there's obviously Tigers in Wilmington this week, apparently meeting with the top however many players in the PGA Tour, discussing how they're moving forward. I don't know how that plays a role necessarily in any legal battles, or if he's just trying to convince players to stay, which obviously if you were at one of these meetings and you're a player and Tiger Woods is trying to convince you to stay, it's probably a pretty good ploy by the PGA Tour. I mean, Tiger Woods is a legend and you respect him very much, but at the same time, Tiger's created all these opportunities for these players, but also he's Tiger Woods. Like, he's benefited because he is who he is, and he's been such a phenomenal winner and prolific winner at all the highest golf tournaments possible that he's created all of these other opportunities for himself, and other people aren't as marketable as him. So to a degree, like, he can tell people to stay, but in terms of the money that he made, I think it's hard to compare to even like, I'm trying to give a good example of like even like a Patrick Cantlay. Like, Patrick Cantlay will never be as marketable as Tiger Woods. He's a boring ass fucking dude. Like, no one cares about Patrick Cantlay. Even as good as he was last year, Xander Schauffele, Scotty Scheffler, like all these guys, they're not as marketable as Tiger. Tiger's Tiger. So the opportunities aren't the same, but him trying to convince them, maybe Jay Monahan will have some more plans to try to give these guys more money, but we'll see what unfolds in a few weeks. But this is kind of seems like a last-ditch effort from Jay to get Tiger in there.
Yeah, well, also Jay looked kind of bad with some of the lawsuit stuff too, because then the more information that came out, it came out that Phil was actually suspended for his comments about the Saudis, and they had said he was taking leave of absence from the tour, but he was actually suspended for like a 2-month period,
which we kind of speculated on.
Yeah, Bryson was like sanctioned, I guess, for speaking positively about LIV, which kind of seems ridiculous. So yeah, I don't know. He's kind of botched the handling of it from the beginning. Even Ricky Fowler spoke out about that, saying that the way they handled it in the beginning, considering it just not a threat and not being proactive, and then now scrambling around and just trying to penalize people out of associating with it, seemed like a pretty bad handling of the situation by Jay.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that. I mean, clearly Jay has handled this very poorly. He's lost a lot of very marketable players. Granted, he hasn't lost a ton of young guys yet, besides Gooch and a few like up and coming guys. But we'll see what unfolds. Obviously, we've heard Cam Young rumors. We've heard Cam Smith rumors, which seem to be more than rumors at this point and more of
Yeah,
like
that
a
would be a
full
big
time.
one.
So we'll see. Cam Smith obviously not playing this week, hip discomfort. So we don't know if that's live and him possibly just ending his reign. But I kind of feel like Liv would love for him to win at East Lake and be able to say that they have the world number one golfer playing on the Live Tour. So I think he actually probably is hurt. That's my genuine feeling. Like he's played a few weeks. Well, I guess he played last week. Given him, if he actually has his hip discomfort, which is apparently spawned off from sciatica, which is pretty brutal to deal with if you know someone who has dealt with that. So who knows? We'll see what Cam Smith's like future holds. I think it'll be in the Live Tour, which creates a ton of controversy considering he's been so prolific over the last couple of years. But I expect him to play next week. So
Yeah, I think he's going to team up in East Lake, and I think that he's going to. I mean, it seems like he's all but a done deal headed to Live too. I mean, he didn't really help himself with the comments. He just kind of gave it a no comment, and I want to win the FedEx Cup, which kind of leads you to believe that he's gone. But yeah, I mean that's a big loss for the PGA Tour because their big thing in the beginning, and obviously you can't say that anymore, is that it was all sort of washed up players, or their primes are behind them, or they're guys that are injured. But Cam Smith he won the Players this year. He won the Open Championship, obviously in dramatic fashion. He's one of like the fan favorites. That would be a huge loss.
Yeah, he's the Players champ and the champion golfer of the year. So yeah, and I mean, granted, and if he wins a playoff event, he's probably going to win Player of the Year unless Scotty wins this week. So yeah, it's crazy. So we'll see what unfolds. A lot to still unfold from that. Let's get into this week. We've kind of run off of 20 or so minutes on a recap and live talk, but we are at a new course this week, Matt. Wilmington Country Club in Delaware, first time here. So no course history to go off of. Obviously a strong field, minus Cam Smith, minus the live players. So we have a strong field and it's a new course. So I think there's a lot of variables to play this week. But for me, I'm going to be looking at a lot of guys who have played well recently and then value on the odds board. And I think to a degree, you could look, there is some optics of the course you can look into that we'll get into that I think specifically approach from, like 125 to 175. So nothing crazy. Approach players for me is going to be key, guys that are playing well on that. And I don't think driving accuracy is going to be too big of an issue this week. Judging off of my boy Andy Lack's comments, it seems like this is not a complicated golf course for these guys. So it's really going to be, to a degree, target golf. So I'll let you take away the Wilmington Country Club.
Yeah, we are happy to see Northeast Golf back here on the schedule, but yeah, if you're looking into the course, it doesn't seem like this is going to be any kind of crazy event. Par 71's 7,534 yards, so it is long. Bent grass greens. The greens are really big. They're over 8,000 square feet. That's almost double what they were last week. So that kind of takes all scrambling and around the green type of stuff out of play. Guys aren't going to have a ton of problems hitting the green. I would kind of look more at sort of 3-putt avoidance, on stuff like that. Actually, but it reminds me, earlier this year when we had an event with bigger greens and we did a show with our guy Spencer, he brought up an interesting point that if you want to try to kind of separate your model from other people's, in particular, playing DFS or whatnot, a way to differentiate that, instead of putting in 3-putt avoidance, which a lot of people are going to use, you can kind of use putting from like 5 feet and in. It's just like a different metric that, because everyone's going to be using 3-putt avoidance to kind of differentiate. So maybe something to think about there. We're obviously focusing more on the outright betting and placements, so it's not a huge difference
like
for us. But for
5 to 10
DFS
feet.
guys,
Yeah.
could be something interesting to think of. Anyway, back to the course. So I was thinking, based off the optics, it's a long course, and maybe it'll play tougher. Par 71 over 7,500 yards. Then I read a quote from Patrick Cantlay, and he said, the golf course is definitely like last year. So if anyone remembers last year's event, him and Bryson got into a playoff at like minus 25 or something.
I think it might have even been 27.
Yeah, maybe even 27. I mean, everyone was, not everyone, but there was a handful of guys over, 20
27
par.
under a playoff.
Yeah, it was like insane. It was a complete birdie fest out there. It was kind of a joke. So I wasn't thrilled to read that. He said, extremely distance based. You've got to hit it as far as you can and hit a lot of fairways. I don't think there's much strategy to this course.
There we
So
go. Yeah.
pretty straightforward there. I will say one thing that's interesting is, as long as the course is the way it sets up, I mean, 2 of the par 5s are over like 635 yards. So there's only 3 par 5s in the course. So when you think about it that way, like for pretty much the whole field, 2 of the 3 are not going to be reachable. They're going to be 3-shot par 5s. So theoretically, I mean, that would kind of bring shorter hitters back into it, because they're not really getting penalized at all on those holes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I think distance is obviously always an advantage, and I'm sure Patrick Cantlay knows better than me. He's been at the course. But it does kind of seem to set up where I wouldn't completely discount the shorter hitters, just because of some of the length. It's so long on the par 5s that even the longer guys are not going to get there in 2.
Yeah, and also the par 4s are, I think 8 of them are under 450. So I mean, granted, the longer hitters are going to have shorter clubs into these par 4s, but they're not going to be brutally tough par 4s where these shorter hitters aren't going to have approach shots. But I do think, with there being giant greens and there being such an elite field, that the elite approach players that are also, for the most part, longer hitters of the driver are going to have an advantage. And that's going to come into play on a lot of these holes where, I mean, the 3-putt avoidance and being able to lag putt well are going to be crucial. But at the same time, if it's like Cantlay says, and you're going to need to make a ton of birdies, you can't really be counting on lag putting too much. Like, you're going to need to be getting on the right level and giving yourself birdie looks. So it's kind of you're going to need someone to be hot with their irons. And whether that's one of the shorter hitters coming from 175 to 200, or the longer hitters coming from 125 to 175, you're going to need your irons to be locked in this week to win. And as always, you need to make some putts, like we saw Will Zalatoris last week. So I think we're on the same page. But it's always interesting with a new course. So
yeah, you never know totally what to expect. But yeah, I'm totally on the same page with you. I mean, it's not like one of those events where you hit the green and you're going to have guys who are lag putting the best for par are going to win. Like, you're going to need to make a ton of birdies. You're going to need to stick your approaches close, is what it sounds like. So yeah, I mean, obviously there's going to be times when you need to, 2-putt from far away, just given the size of the greens, and if you hit a bad tee shot. But for the most part, yeah, I think you're pretty dead on that your irons are maybe at point proximity.
And if you do miss a green or miss the fairways, there are a ton of bunkers here as well. Not water, which is nice for some of the diabolicalness. We had some of our guys in the water pretty often over the weekend last week. It's only in play on like 4 holes, so in theory, there's less problems off the tee, but it is like a tree lined course. So, like any northeast or east coast, like, I wouldn't consider Delaware, I guess, northeast, but it's going to be a tree line course where you can't be completely out of control. But
I guess technically it's about the mid-Atlantic.
Yeah. Geography is not our strong suit, but we'll continue. It's been 30 minutes and we have not gotten to the odds board yet, so we'll get into that now. I don't think it's a huge surprise, but Rory McIlroy is still the favorite, 10-1 on FanDuel Sportsbook currently on a Tuesday night. John Rahm is at 12-1. Patrick Cantlay, Matt Fitzpatrick, Justin Thomas, Tony Finau, and Scotty Scheffler all at 14. And and then Will Zalatoris is at 16. Those are the guys under 20 to 1. So there's 8 of them, and then there's a pretty big group between 20 and 40. And there's only 70 guys in this field. Top 30 advance. Well, the top 30 in FedEx Cup points advance to Eastlake next week, which obviously is a culmination of the entire year. Points are worth double during these playoff events, so that adds some caveats into guys trying to qualify for next week. But for the most part, similar strategy for me as it was last week, where it feels, and if you look at the BMW Championship history, even though we've seen pretty big discrepancies, although actually it's really just a discrepancy between 2021 and 2020, where Cantlay shot 27 under, went to a playoff with Bryson at Caves Valley. John Rahm won at Olympia Fields the year prior at -4, but then 2019 through 2015, all of the winning scores are over -20. So Jason Day, Dustin Johnson, Mark Leishman, Keegan Bradley, Justin Thomas. And Keegan Bradley is really probably the biggest outlier, obviously, over the last 6 years. Mark Leishman is a relative surprise too, but he was playing pretty well in 2017. I think he went off at under 50 to 1. So we've seen some big names win here, and we've also seen a ton of birdies made at the BMW Championship over its history. There's nothing really to tell us that Wilmington Country Club is going to offer a huge problem to these golfers. So I expect the winning score to be pretty low. I don't know if we're going to get to something as ridiculous as Caves Valley, but I would say my prediction would be somewhere between -17 and -20. And it actually probably could get into the 20s. So that's my thought process. And at the end of the day, it feels like the guys under 40, 50 to 1, similar to last week. There's a ton of them, but that's probably where your winner's going to come from. And not to ramble here, but I it's funny saying that, but last week, like Zalatoris wins, but Sepp Straka went off at huge odds. Molinax went off at huge odds. Adam Scott was off over 50 to 1. Lucas Glover was off over 100 to 1. The top of the leaderboard did end up to be with a ton of long shots on there. But as we saw, the outright who did win was Will Zalatoris, and he went off in the mid-20s. So my whole viewpoint could have been thrown off if Sepp Straka wins last week, which he easily could have. But at the end of the day, I feel like you're safer taking a few players under 50 instead of trying to spread it out down the board. But we'll get into that. There are maybe a few value plays I don't hate over 50, but starting with the guys. Yeah.
Adding to that, too, like it is kind of funny that we talk about it throughout the year in some of these easier events. Like there is kind of more of a chance for some of these, I don't want to say worse, but some of these longer shots to win because if everyone's making a ton of birdies, it kind of takes a lot of the tough, challenging parts of the game out, and it kind of almost levels the playing field a little bit.
Yeah, but that's what's funny about last week is that the winning score was -15, and those two guys played clearly the best, and the better golfers struggled. And I think that maybe goes to something I mentioned last week, where shaking the rust off of not playing in a few weeks for most of the guys at the top of the board. We saw Rory miss a cut. We saw Scheffler miss a cut. Xander played poorly. Cantlay played poorly on the weekend. Morikawa played well, but he also showed some rust. He hit a few bad shots and then missed some short putts, which is not crazy for him. But for the most part, the top of the board played pretty poorly. Like Zalatoris, Sungjae, Burns. A lot of the guys I took were kind of relevant going into Sunday, but for a majority of the top of the board, they weren't really relevant, besides Tony Finau, who we'll get into as well. But Tony Finau did continue to play well. So top 8 on the board, Matt. Where are you leaning? Are you taking anyone under 20 to 1? Took us a long time to get here, but here we are.
We're here now, though. I like Justin Thomas this week, and I kind of like him a lot. He covered a lot of the bases that I like this week. I'm just looking at some stats here in the last 36 rounds. He's 5th tee to green, 10th at ball striking. His proximity numbers from 150 to 175. He's 3rd in the field. 6th in the field from 175 to 200. He's hitting his irons really well. And I mean, the thing that I kind of like about him this week, ordinarily the turnoff for him, for me, in some of these Birdie Fest events is, can he make enough putts? He's actually putting pretty well lately. He's 20th in the field in his last 36 rounds. So when he kind of has that putter, I'm not going to, call him like a great putter, but when he's putting like decently, like he is now, I mean, he becomes one of those guys that doesn't really have many weaknesses. He's also, if you want to look at three-putt avoidance because of the big green, he's second in the field in the last 36 rounds in three-putt avoidance. So there's a lot to like about JT this week. I think this is the first time I have taken him since he won first at the PGA. So back on board. Hopefully he goes back to back for me there and kind of gets us back in that win column.
Love it, because I'm going with you. I'm riding JT as well. I think that, I kind of used the narrative last week where I thought Finau and Fitzpatrick and Xander had kind of maybe used a lot of their magic already this year, and there are so many good players in the field that I didn't necessarily want to take them under 20 to 1. And JT feels at the best price. I got him at 16 to 1, and he's down to 14 now. But I would say the course does set up well for him. And even if you look at pretty much everything has been phenomenal. Besides, you're going to get an off week with his putter, but like you said, he's been really phenomenal putting for the most part. His around the green game is spectacular. So if he does get himself into these bunkers or have any trouble around the greens, he's going to be fine. And he's long off the tee and brilliant with his iron. So I think that we saw enough last week where he gained 3 strokes off the tee, didn't hit his irons particularly well, which I think will come back to relative form where, he gains close to 3 strokes on approach over his last 10 tournaments, and he only gained 0.8 last week. I think that kind of comes into a course where I think it'll set up well for him. And yeah, I think he stuck out to me at the top of the board, and I really like that play. So I'm riding with you on that one.
I love it.
I will say Rahm, we took him last week. I think he had moments where he looked pretty good, and he scares me a bit this week after kind of rounding into form maybe a little last week. But I think it's tough to go to Rory after a week where he doesn't play well, and he admittedly said he had taken like multiple weeks off after the Open to just basically not touch a golf club and just be a vegetable, basically. Not eating any vegetables, but being a vegetable. And then, yeah, like I said with Finau, Fitzpatrick, I think that it's tough. It's going to be tough for them to win again. I don't hate their play, obviously, but the odds aren't for me. So I like JT in this range, and I wouldn't be surprised if Zalatoris plays well again this week too. So I think he's potentially a scary guy to go back to back.
Well, he's never lost with his current caddy too.
Very true.
So something to consider.
And also, if he's making putts like he did last week, like he's very formidable. So yeah, you can make a case legitimately for all the guys that are 20, and we'll get into the next range. You can make a case for pretty much everyone under 40 and not feel crazy about any of it. So I stuck with JT, and I'm going to take a few more bets in the 20s to 40 range. That's how I decided to kind of build my card. I thought he was the best choice up top, and we'll go from there. So 20 to 50, we have Xander Schauffele, Colin Morikawa, Cam Young, 20 to 22, Sam Burns and Sungjae also at 22 to 1, Victor Hovland at 27, and then Neiman, Tom Kim, Jordan Spieth, and Shane Lowry between 31 and 41. Neiman, his odds have plummeted. He started at 45. I got him at 40. There we go. So we're going back to Neiman. But yeah, this odds range definitely kind of hunt around, see what you can get here. But I think this is a great range again to fire away from, which is where the winner came from last week in Zalatoris. So I love this range. Like I said, I'm going back to Neiman at 40, but he's down to 31. And yeah, I don't know. I think we just saw a ton of good things from Neiman last week. Like he, similar to Hovland, had a few blow-up holes that really cost him. But he was pretty spectacular tee to green. He finished 13th, gained 6 strokes tee to green, most of that was on approach. Gained 5.8 on approach, which is, like you mentioned, going to be huge this week. He actually putted okay, and I trust him more on bent than really any other surface. He's actually 16th in this field, strokes gained putting on bent over his last 50 rounds. And yeah, I mean, of the guys that ceiling is legitimately as elite as it gets, he's at the best odds. And I think that's probably why the books are getting scared, because people are hammering him when you're seeing him at 40 in a 70% field. So I think we got it in at a good time, and we just ride the Neiman Express, and hopefully he plays well this week.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I mean, you made some good points there. I think a few other things you touched on the tee to green. Just over his last 5 events, he's gaining 4.6 strokes on average tee to green. And then if you go to last 10, 5.7. So, I mean, he's been really solid in that category. I would say kind of what's letting him down lately in his last 5 events, which we actually talked him up a lot on at the beginning of the year, is around the green. He's kind of struggled, in comparison to what he was doing before, and he's kind of going back to just not terrible, but just neutral in that category. Very baseline against the field, but that's something that we kind of touched on in the opening. You're not going to have to worry about much this week. The greens are really big. He's not going to have to worry about scrambling around this week. So,
well, if you're going to win, yeah,
even more of a reason to like him. Yeah,
right. Like if you're going to win, you can't be worrying about that stuff.
Exactly.
Like a ton of times over the course.
Yeah,
of the
and
week.
I mean we're betting on ceiling for these guys,
Right.
but that's not something that got like last week. You kind of had the feeling that guys are going to have to scramble around at times. This week, yeah, I mean I'm sure there's going to be times when they miss the green, but for the most part, it's not going to be part of a winning formula scrambling around this week.
No, it shouldn't be. I mean, it definitely, if you're going to shoot 20 under, it can't be. So with that same thought in mind, I'm going back to 2 guys I took last week. I'm going back to Sam Burns and Colin Morikawa. I got Burns at 25 and Morikawa at 22. Yeah, I think Morikawa is crazy, man. I mean, he looked really dialed at certain points and was super weird because he gained 2.6 strokes putting, but also in classic fashion missed like multiple extremely short putts for birdie. And so he putted well, but also could have been better. And then it kind of like he was shaking off some rust in the first couple rounds, ended up gaining over 3 strokes on approach, gained on the tee, gained in every facet of the game, was very well rounded, finished 5th. Pretty legitimate performance for not playing since the Open Championship and in a place where he missed the cut. So I kind of feel like Colin's in the position where if he's rolling with those irons like he can be, and we touch on, he's not long or short. He's kind of in that even medium, probably slightly above average off the tee in terms of driving distance. But when he's from 100 to 150 yards and he's locked in, like he's putting him to 3 feet, and that was what he was doing at certain points last week, and missed some, made some. But in this fashion, I really like Colin at that number, so I went back to Morikawa and my guy Sam Burns. I've preached all year. It's the year of Sam Burns. He gave us a little bit of a run into the weekend. Played really poorly at the end of Saturday.
Yeah.
And then he had some really weird moments on Sunday too. I mean, he didn't hit the ball well enough to really get any contention, but he missed some weird short putts on Sunday as well. I think he was kind of having just some out of body experiences there. But I like the value on Burns. He's been a 3-time winner this year. Seems like when he's locked in, he's obviously can compete with the best of them. But I think he's got some great motivation in terms of the FedEx Cup championship in totality. He's still inside the top 5. So if he wins this week, he puts himself in great position for East Lake. And I think in theory, this course sets up beautifully for him too. Pretty long off the tee, great with his irons between 125, 200. And we've seen him be a great putter. And it's funny, Bermuda Burns didn't really work out last week, but the guy's just a good putter on all aspects. Similar to Cam Smith to a degree. I mean, he's 7th in the field on putting on bent over his last 50 rounds. So I trust Burns on any surface. And yeah, he pops up inside the top 20 in most of the metrics I used this week. So I love Burns again.
Yeah, I have an open spot on my card currently, and I may add someone in this range. I haven't decided who I'm going to go to. One thing I'll say about Morikawa, you touched on. I did read a report this week. I didn't follow too closely into it, so if I'm wrong,
He's got a swing back.
Yeah, he's got his cut back, and he also is going back to the conventional putting grip.
Yeah.
Which is interesting though, because you said he gained strokes last week putting, but I don't know. I think it's a good sign. Obviously, he's got his cut back because his bread and butter is his irons. If they're back, that's a very good sign. Putting, I mean, who knows what the hell he's ever going to do out there. But yeah, I mean, I think hearing that about his irons is definitely very positive.
Yeah, I mean, he gained strokes putting for the first time. I mean, we don't have the statistics on the Open or the Scottish Open, but I can't imagine they were good because he missed the cut in both. The U.S. Open, I think he probably putted pretty well. I don't have the stats in front of me here on Fantasy National, but he finished inside the top five. But besides that, we haven't seen him gain strokes putting since February at the Genesis. So at the end of the day, I'm not betting on Morikawa for his putting anyway. So I'm hoping for his ceiling off the tee and approach game, which I think saw some great signs of life coming off last week. And I'm excited to see him play this course because I think when he's on, he could probably tear this place apart. So those not very long par fours and even long par fives, like when he's laying up on par fives, he seems like very successful in putting balls inside 10 feet from 100 to 120 yards when he's laying up. So I love Morikawa and Burns, and it's one of those things when you're betting in the playoffs that like you bet guys last week that played pretty well but didn't quite get it done. Feels kind of disingenuous to jump off and then potentially see them win in the following week. So it was pretty easy for me to go back to Morikawa and Burns at their odds as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. In this range.
Do you have an open spot?
Yeah, I have an open spot. I'm still deciding, but I'm going to take Victor Hoffland again. I got a 33 on him. He finished in the top 20 last week. He had some up and down moments, but I mean, I like him from a ball striking perspective. 13th in ball striking last 36 rounds, 13th in approach, and he's actually putted pretty well too. I mean, he's 11th in putting. If you look at, last 36, he's 14th in proximity, 150 to 175, and 5th, 175 to 200. And kind of like what I touched on with Neiman, I really like about Hoffland this week is, I mean, we all know that he sucks around the green, and that's what kills him in a lot of tournaments. And he's not going to have to worry about that this week. This kind of feels like it's like Hovland's time for a big win. One of these like events where you just ball strike, on the course, you go low, like there's not too much trouble. This is perfectly, tailor-made for Victor Hovland. We talk about, in a lot of the big events, it's tougher courses and like he struggles around the green and he's not good enough with a short game to win. You don't really have to worry about that this week. This could be kind of his time for a big win.
I like that thought process a lot, actually. I think of the guys in this range, Hovland kind of stuck out to me because he's behind Sanjay, Cam Young, Burns, and Morikawa to a significant degree. I mean, even right now on FanDuel, he's at 27 to 1. And on DraftKings, he's at 30. So they're pretty good numbers for a guy that clearly, when he's on, he can go low and compete with the best of them. We haven't seen him, I guess, besides the Open Championship, we haven't seen him really compete at the highest level. But I think rolling off that and then playing decently last week, I think his mojo is probably high. And, from a vibes perspective, he's got to be feeling pretty good. So I like that. I like the thought. I don't hate it. I've already committed to this top part of the board, so I'm kind of locked in there. But I will note that I think Sungjae, Cam Young could also be decent plays this week. Cam Young, if you're going on the theory of, like I mentioned last week, of Zalatoris being due for a win, and they both were on the top of the money list in the history of the PGA Tour for money earned without winning an event. So now, obviously, it's just Cam Young. Zalatoris won. So, due theory, Cam Young could be due, which is scary. And he's a Wake Forest guy. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'd be more inclined if he was at Hovland's number or in the 30s. So I didn't get that. And I'm not, I have enough good bets, I think, to not dabble with Cam Young, but I think him and Sungjae both seem like decent plays. Sungjae I'm getting off Sungjae for this week just because he put himself in pretty good position all week and was hitting the ball at 25 feet and missing his birdie putt, tapping for par. And like that's just not going to be enough this week. I could see him turning that around and hitting the ball closer and making some putts. He seems to make more putts. But yeah, it's going to be tough if Sanjay wins. But I'm getting off that. 22 is enough. So
Yeah. What is going on with Jordan Spieth? I mean, it's obviously not great, but it's pretty. I mean, seeing him at 34-1 is kind of funny because when we've seen him at every major this year going off at like 14, 15, you know what I mean? He's like one of the favorites, and now he's 34, and it seems like no one's batting an eye at it.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I mean, we're not far removed from him playing really well. I mean, he won the Heritage in April, finished second to Byron Nelson in May, seventh to Charles Schwab in late May, 18th at the Memorial in June, 10th at the Scottish Open, and then 8th at the Open. And then he didn't play for a month and missed the cut last week and looked pretty bad doing it. I mean, he was horrible off the tee, horrible on approach, putted poorly. Like, he did everything really bad. So I think it's understandable. And yeah, I don't know. It's kind of funny. I didn't bat an eye on it either. So I'm not doing it, but it doesn't seem like a horrible idea.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing too with him is like if he's not going to make putts, which has kind of been a trend for him, it's going to be very hard for him to win an event that you have to get to, minus 20 to do so.
Right. So I'm glad you noted that. So just in case he does win, we noticed, that his odds are
credit if he wins, but also we gave a pretty good explanation of why he won't if he loses. So
right. So over 40, Corey Connors, Tyrrell Hatton, Hideki Matsuyama, Max Homa between 45 and 50 on FanDuel. Adam Scott, Cam Davis, Aaron Wise, all at 55. Russ Henley, Billy Horschel, Davis Riley, Taylor Pendrith, Grillo, Keith Mitchell, 60 to 65. There were 75 and above. Harmon, Thigala, Bradley, McNeely, Poston, Siwoo, Trey Molinek, Seamus, Harold Varner, Scott Stallings. I'm not going to read the entire list, but we're in the bomb zone, I think, of this territory. Although, for the guys between 40 and 70, Matt, I mean, I think there's still some decent value here. Do you have some plays in this area? Obviously, we took Neiman at 40. He's down to 31 now, but
who's this?
No, I'm saying we already took Neiman.
Oh, yeah, very
He's
sure.
not currently in this range anymore. But
yeah, good point. I'm gonna go back to Max Homa, 50-1. Seems, I mean, he's won twice already this year. It just kind of feels like a good number for a guy that's already won twice. He's, proven he can win some of these better events. I mean, he needs to get his irons straightened out a little bit because the last two times we've seen him, they've been a little off. Prior to that, though, he was really good. Really in all facets of his game, and he still is, over the last 36 rounds, top 20 in the field in off the tee, approach game, and putting. So that's obviously a very good thing. The thing I like most about him is probably the putting. Like, he's one of those guys that he is a really good putter, but he also can, he heats up with the putter at times. And, in particular on bent, he's sixth in the field in his last 24 rounds on bent. On an event like this, where you're going to have to get to, we're thinking either high teens or maybe even low 20s, like you're going to need a guy that's going to get hot putting and make a lot of birdies. I think Homa is capable of doing that. He's going to need his irons better this week than he has the last 2 weeks, but at 50-1, I mean, I'm going to take a shot on it. I think that's a good enough number to justify doing so.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'm kind of surprised I'm not going to do it in back-to-back weeks, even though the number does seem good. I don't love him in necessarily a birdie fest type situation, but you're still getting a really good number on a guy that's won multiple times and is playing the best golf of his life. So I do not hate that at all. I am going to go to, what I think is, I don't know if I'll say disrespectful, but relatively disrespectful. Hideki Matsuyama is at 50-1, and you can get him at 65 on DraftKings. I think that is pretty crazy. Obviously, he didn't play well in Europe at the Scottish Open. He missed the cut. 68th at the Open, and we've seen him now withdraw multiple times, which in theory is scary. But Hideki is kind of like one of these guys where if he doesn't feel like playing, he just doesn't play, and if he's not feeling well, he's not going to play. So, I mean, he could have easily teed it up last week, tried to make the cut, try to gain some points. Doesn't feel like it's necessary. He's inside the top 30 for the FedEx Cup this year. We just saw him finish 4th at the U.S. Open in June, 3rd at the Byron Nelson in May. And his track record of coming back off of WDs is actually pretty good. Finished 4th at the Olympics after withdrawing in events prior, and I believe a top 20 at the Masters after withdrawing the event prior to that. So I'm not really – at the end of the day, it's a value play because Hideki, when he's playing well, he's an elite iron player. And he actually, surprisingly, even with his poor play in Europe, he's top 10 in my model. He's 11th on approach over his last 24 rounds, 16th tee to green, 9th and 4th in proximities from 125 to 150 and 150 to 175. He's good on the long par threes, which there are a couple of this week. And I think he's going to be clutch on the intermediate length par fours. So, yeah, I think Hideki's a really good value play this week. It's really obviously hit or miss. He's either going to show up and look like he's potential to play well, or he's going to look like shit. And I don't see him coming back and looking horrific. So I really do like Hideki this week with the value that he's got this week. So I think if you get a 65 on Hideki, you should be very happy about that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. I mean, ordinarily you would be scared of a guy who withdraws, but with Hideki, it just seems like it happens kind of often. So you kind of just roll with it because we've seen, I mean, earlier in the year, he had like the back injury and everyone was freaking out about it. And then he came back and he played really well. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely a really good number. It's kind of intriguing, actually.
Yeah, it's very intriguing. Also, I mean, Robert Trent Jones, designer of this golf course, he's played very well at Firestone in the past. And it's similar to JT. It just feels like one of those places where they're going to be good off the tee, and when they're locked in with their irons, they're going to give themselves chances. They're both major caliber type players in terms of lag putting. They're not going to be intimidated by the big greens. I think they'll get themselves in the right level. And Hideki is way more of a wild card this week based off of we haven't seen him since the Open Championship. But I think it's worth a shot at that number. So I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's you might have talked me into it, to be honest. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm going to have to look further into that because I didn't realize he was that far down the board.
Yeah, it's crazy. So that's going to do it for me on the outright card. I've talked a shit ton about Russell Henley. I will bet him first round leader just to get that out of the way because I don't think that if he's either way, I don't think he's going to win this event. Like I didn't really think he's going to win last week, but I took him at the number. I can get him at 70 this week, and in theory, an approach style course should be a lot of birdies out there. Russell Henley, if he's dialed in, can definitely make a ton of birdies at this place, but over 4 days with this caliber field, I don't see him doing it. And if he's going to win, I think he needs to put up some ridiculous numbers in Thursday, Friday, and just try to hold on for dear life on Saturday and Sunday. So I'll take a first-round leader bet on him. And I'll probably take a first-round leader bet on Keegan Bradley as well. Similar feel. I think he can get really hot at this place. And I think it's worth the first-round leader stab with the odds that are available. He's also played really well at Firestone, Robert Trent Jones' design. And he also has been very good from the 150 to 175 proximity over his last 24 rounds. He's second in the field. So those two are hot on my first round leaderboard in terms of some value plays. Other than that, that's kind of my card for the most part. You're not going to get good value on top 20s or top 40s this week. It's a no-cut 70-person field. So I will say I'll be remiss if I didn't say that Scott Stalling somehow populated as number 2 on my model on Fantasy National. So I have to take him in some capacity. I don't know if that's going to be first-round leader or top 20, but he kind of boned me last week with a miscut. So, but I can't really complain. He's been really good. Passed a bunch of top 20s over the last few weeks. So those are my thoughts. Anyone else that's ringing the bell for you over 100 to 1?
Yeah, well, maybe not over 100 to 1, but I could get on board with the Keegan first round leader. I like that thought. Obviously, you can go very low. I'm gonna have to look at like what the value is on the finishing positions, because there are two guys that I would like to go to that I don't think are going to win, but I like them for this event.
I'm on the top 20 page. Who are you thinking?
Keith Mitchell, my guy Keith Mitchell, who's been cashing these placements for me. I think it's like now 3 straight events he's cashed.
Yeah, he's plus 175 top 20.
Okay, not great, but do they have top 30s up there? What is he at on that?
They do have top 30s. I mean, he's minus 135 for a top 30.
Gross. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's looking more like a top 20.
Yeah, so top 30s. Top 30s, there's really only the guys that are over 100 to 1 are the only ones that are in plus money for top 30. And then top 40, there's not a single person that's a plus money play. So
wow, that's not great. What real quick while you have it up, top 20, what is it on Cam Davis?
Cam Davis top 20 is plus 175 as well.
Okay, well, so those are the two guys I'm looking at. I think Cam Davis actually sets up pretty good for this course.
Yeah, I think he does too. Actually, in a first round leader playing Cam Davis doesn't sound not bad either.
Yeah, he kind of stood out to me in a lot of the categories I looked at. Again, it's like one of those things where, you know, I don't anticipate him beating the likes of, you know, Rory, Rahm, JT. He's more at this point in his career more built to win. You know, kind of all
Barracuda.
Yeah, might be a little better than that. I mean, I was gonna say like Rocket Mortgage 3M type of bets, but yeah, I think he's definitely, you know, good enough to compete and maybe get inside the top 20 this week. So I'll probably get on board him. Catching strays
I like that. Yeah. So yeah, those are the thoughts I pretty much have. I mean, like just trying to look for a potential long shot, but there really isn't enough value to really take any of these guys with certainty in the top 30 or top 20 markets that I think are worth necessarily the bet that you have to put on them to make decent money. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at. Just to recap, I'm on JT, Burns and Morikawa, Neiman, and Matsuyama. And then Henley, Bradley, and I think now a Cam Davis first round leader. Probably add another one, maybe closer to the top of the board. And then I will add Stallings finish position just because I feel obliged with him still looking so rock solid in my models and how well he's hit the ball even with his missed cut last week. And I can get some pretty good value on him top 20. He's plus 280. But other than that, I'm going to fill in the cracks with a few other plays, but it's not really a great week for finishing position bets. It's kind of like throw your darts, not even darts, just fucking lay the pipe down on some of the guys at the top of the board to win and go from there.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's getting toward the point of the season where it's tough to kind of get into placements and all these crazy things. My card right now is JT, Victor Hoffland, Neiman, Max Homa, and I have an open spot that I'm still deciding on. First round leader, I think I'm going to get on board Keegan with you. I'm going to take Cam Davis and probably one of my other outrights, you know, more toward the top of the board in that capacity. I think I'm going to take Keith Mitchell and Cam Davis for the top 20s, even though the numbers aren't great. And yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at this week. It's, you know, there's not too many options to go with. It's not worth getting crazy at the lack of value there.
Yeah. So one and done quickly. Like I mentioned, I'm back inside the top 100, 71st in the Mayo, one and done. I'm at $800 payout currently, with the possibility with these $2.7 million winner purse to climb up inside the top 20 and make some serious money on this one and done season. So I'm between Sam Burns, Tony Finau, and Matt Fitzpatrick. Kind of crazy having those 3 options available to me. Kind of scary. Been rocking with the year of Sam Burns all year, and I haven't used him in a one and done situation yet. And he's won 3 tournaments, so I've kind of blown 3 opportunities there, and feel like ending the year with him and hoping that he can get it done for me. But also Finau feels like maybe a little bit smarter play. He's been so hot, so I'm pretty much between those 2. I'm gonna make money regardless, but it's a tough call there.
Yeah, I don't even know who I have left. I am unfortunately out of the money, so it doesn't really matter.
I mean, 2.7 million. Like if you win, you're probably gonna get pretty close to the money.
So yeah, I mean, I think I have some good guys left, and I have Fitzpatrick left. I really don't want to use him. I have to look at who I have left. I don't know, to be honest. No one I'm taking outright I've left. I can tell you that much. I
Yeah,
think I have
you're still in 2,269th with $6,477. So just to get close to the money, I'm trying to get to the the page where the money ends. So it's starting to think it might not matter.
Yeah. In which case, I just won't fill anyone out.
You don't even want to. Yeah, what is that? 6.7. So you can get to 9.4. No, so you're still technically in it.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I also have Xander left, but
You're barely in it.
So I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Well, you know what
yeah.
I knew? The winner, and then a lot of people who like think that they're screwed and they don't put picks in.
Possible. So pick the winner and see what happens. But yeah, it's another episode of Draws and Fades that we've really rambled on this week. No producer boss. We've just lost the trainer off the track. So we'll be back next week for the finale at East Lake, and then we have a live event coming up, and then we have a little bit of a break on the PGA Tour. But let's cash another winner this week and move on to the finals. So
yeah, we do have some interviews kind of in the works for some of those down weeks
for the fall swing. Yeah.
Keep a
look out for that.
Open eye out for that. Yeah, look out. That's what I was looking for.
All right. We'll talk to you guys next week.